A U.S. official tells CBS News that the U.S. has now resumed sending some weapons to Ukraine. That decision follows last week's move to pause some shipments there. The pause was reportedly due to concerns about the U.S. military stockpiles falling too low. And today's announcement comes after Russia launched its largest drone attack on Ukraine since the start of the war. That was overnight, according to Ukraine's Air Force. Ukraine says Russia launched more than 700 drones and decoy drones, in addition to 13 missiles. President Zelensky said most of the incoming fire was shot down, but some were able to make it through Ukraine's air defenses. CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson joins us now. And Eleanor, which weapons are being sent to Ukraine, and how much of a difference could those weapons make in the war?
U.S. officials tell us that some of the weapons that have resumed going over to Ukraine in shipments that were paused briefly last week include 155 millimeter artillery and precision-guided munitions known as GMLRS. It's important to note that the weapons going over now were committed by the previous administration, by the Biden administration. So those flowing back into Ukraine continues the status quo. What Ukraine is asking of President Trump is to commit more weapons, commit to additional defense systems heading over to Ukraine. The shipments that have resumed were briefly paused last week while the Pentagon was conducting a review of all of the weapons it sends to countries around the world. Amidst that pause, someone, and the Pentagon's not saying who, authorized a pause. The president yesterday, when asked about this, appeared to be caught off guard, said that he did not know who actually authorized the pause. Now, this wasn't the first time the Trump administration has paused shipments to Ukraine committed by the Biden administration, but the earlier pauses were part of a pressure campaign the Trump administration was using for Europe to provide more weapons to Ukraine and for Ukraine to get to the negotiating table for a potential peace deal. This pause didn't appear to be part of any pressure campaign. It looked more like poor timing because it came at the exact same time President Trump was starting to show he was losing patience with Vladimir Putin, who has been escalating the attacks on Ukrainian cities.
Now, Eleanor, we had touched upon this. The administration initially said they had concerns about the U.S.'s own stockpile of key weapon systems. What do we know about the status on that?
So the U.S. learned very early on in the war, in Ukraine's war, that the rate of consumption of ammunition far outpaces the production capacity of the defense industrial base to produce more weapons. That's why you see the U.S. military ramping up production of 155 millimeter artillery, which has been included in almost every shipment the U.S. has sent to Ukraine, and ramping up production of Patriot interceptor missiles that Ukraine relies on to shoot down incoming missiles and drones. With all of the weapons the U.S. has provided to Ukraine, the Pentagon is concerned about its own stockpiles. Those concerns are not new. Under the Biden administration, with each new weapon that Ukraine requested, the Pentagon initially said, no, we can't spare any of those. But then President Biden got involved, ordered the weapons, and the military found a way to get to yes. So these concerns are not new. Former officials and some current officials say that the military has enough weapons for any contingencies the U.S. may get involved in, but what the Trump administration has to decide is how far it's willing to go to commit more to Ukraine, who's in a war right now.
All right, Eleanor Watson, thank you very much for joining us.